Hello and welcome to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Katafamo. Want to welcome you back here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA FM 104.7. We have got a jammed-packed show for you this week. We'll be talking a little golf, talking a little varsity volleyball, and we'll be talking some Coconino High School athletics. As we all know, football season has officially kicked off. A bunch of teams around the 4A Grand Canyon region got their seasons kicked off last week. Of course, the games will continue this week, and we had a lot of great games. We also had the top 100 teams in the state get announced, and there were 3 4A Grand Canyon region teams that cracked the top 100. And the first one is Coconino High School. The Panthers find themselves at number 57, beating Marcos Deniza 29-26 in overtime, a huge goal line stand. Marcos Deniza wanted to score, and Coconino was able to shut the door right in their face and earn the victory in overtime again, 29-26 last week against Marcos Deniza. So they landed 57 in the top 100. The second team, Lee Williams. Lee Williams able to get a big victory against Prescott last week, 31-15. They sit at number 89 in the state. And finally, Bradshaw Mountain High School. The Bears finding their spot at 98 after their victory against Mojave. A huge win for Coach Bob Young in his first season with Bradshaw Mountain. Of course, former longtime Mingus Union coach here in Cottonwood. They beat Mojave 56-0. So hopefully throughout the season, we'll be able to announce more and more teams making their way in the top 100, in the top 50, the 25, hopefully at some point the 15 and the 10. But the season is a little short this year, and only time will tell to see who goes from the bottom of the ranks to the top and so on and so forth. But for right now, it's always great to see some teams in the top 100, and we had 3 of them in our region. On the show today, as I mentioned, we've got a jam-packed show with a whole bunch of guests. First and foremost, we'll get an opportunity to sit down with girls varsity volleyball coach at Mingus Union High School, Hunter Tibbs. Coach Tibbs is in his first season at the helm at the varsity level for the girls volleyball program at Mingus Union. He talks a little bit about the season so far, his first year as a head coach, and some of the inspirations that he's had along the way. Great interview. Coach Tibbs is a very, very good coach, and was a wonderful interview to talk with. Now we'll sit down with Athletic Director Eric Freas of Coconino High School. They return back to in-person campus. Obviously, they are going to be hosting Flagstaff High School, their home games, sharing the field with a rival. It's almost like if Prescott and Bradshaw got an opportunity to play on the same field. So we talked a little bit about that with Mr. Freas. And, of course, the return to in-person learning, as I mentioned, and the fall season so far. They got some good things going on at Coconino. Want to thank Mr. Freas for taking the time to sit down and talk with me again. Great interview. All these are great interviews. And finally, we get an opportunity to sit down with David Capka, the head coach at Bradshaw Mountain High School for the boys golf team, the boys varsity golf team. And again, talking just about the season so far and what we can expect from the team as their season comes down to a close. They've been playing golf since, I believe, either the end of August or the beginning of September, because you can socially distance a little easier in golf than you can in sports like football or soccer or volleyball. But nonetheless, we've got sports going on, and in my opinion, that's all that matters. And we're happy to have you along here on Off the Bench, and we'll continue to be reporting sports as they go along. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a great show ahead for you. We hope you stick around. Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm Philip Katafamo. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll sit down with Coach Hunter Tibbs of Mingus Union High School girls varsity volleyball coach. On the other side of this break, Off the Bench will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Want to welcome you back here to Off the Bench. I'm Philip Catafamo, your host. I am joined now by the Mingus Marauders head varsity coach for the girls volleyball team, Coach Hunter Tibbs. Coach, welcome onto the program.
Thanks for having me.
So far, the fall season has been going off without a hitch. You guys have had a few games so far this season. How are you looking as we begin the fall sports season?
We taking over a program. It's kind of starting from square one sometimes, and so we've got a long ways to go, but we're making progress, and that's good. Having really good conversations with our girls, and so we're learning, we're growing, and excited for what this program is going to be doing here in a couple of years.
How do you feel your team matches up in the region this year?
I think we're probably right in the middle of the pack. Being the first year, that's okay. Last year we're almost dead last, and so this year moving up the ladder is great. Having some success. I had a difficult loss against Lee Williams, and so things like that as a program we've got to be able to find a way to win, find a way to conquer ourselves, and that was a big thing last game against Lee Williams. We've got to be able to pull out some of those wins.
You have 7 returning players this year, and of course, not all of them are seniors, but a good bunch of girls. Regardless, a lot of experience on this team. How do you feel that how do you feel that experience is going to help your team going forward?
It's been great. We've had some long bus rides, and so that leads to some really good conversation. Especially my seniors, they want to lead. They want to change this program. They know it's their last year, but they want to set up these girls for success. We got a lot of sophomore, freshman girls that are coming up, rising through the program, even some juniors that are getting some good looks. And so it's been great, especially for these seniors. I've just seen a maturity out of them to be able to own their stuff as well as to stop playing for themselves and start playing for the team. And that's been a great transformation for this program.
What about you, Coach? As a young coach, your first season as the varsity head coach for the Mingus Marauders at the varsity level, you were the freshman coach last year, and I know there was probably some instances where you were able to sort of watch the varsity or the upper level teams. But what about you? How has it been for your first season as the varsity coach?
Well, 2020 has been probably the hardest part for us. We didn't have any summer stuff, and so basically started from scratch right at week 1, which is really hard to do. But I've got a great group of coaches, assistants this year. They've just been super helpful. But even more so, I've got probably 4 or 5 coaches that I'm close friends with, that I've coached with before or I've played volleyball with before, whatever the case is. And they've been a huge help to me. I've got a lot to learn, a lot to grow. But I think the girls have probably 6 or 7 coaches that are really invested in them, whether they see them often or not. So it's been great.
I mean, just kind of briefly, Coach, how did you get started coaching volleyball at Mingus?
At Mingus, I actually was asked that by some of my freshman girls, so that's kind of funny. But I played volleyball just in a league here and got connected with the head coach last year via the rec league here. And so we played a little bit there, and they were needing a freshman coach. And so I was like, hey, I've got a little bit of coaching experience and would love to get involved. So that's how I got started here at Mingus. Super excited to be able to get in this program.
Is there anybody that you like to base your coaching style off of?
Yeah. Actually growing up in high school, I was very observant. We had a varsity soccer coach that I can remember to this day. He brought his daughters to our guys' varsity soccer practice and pulled us all in and kind of like, hey, like the S word's not acceptable. And we're all thinking, an inappropriate word, but he's like, don't say stupid, don't, all these, little kid words that we're not allowed to say. And it's just, at that moment, it was just like, okay, like, it's more than a soccer team. We're a family. And so Coach Schenkel, if you end up watching this, thank you. And Coach Hammond, she had her volleyball girls over all the time to her house, and that was a huge impact for me. And so I base that off of two things. First of all, hopefully my athletes all know that I care about them. And second of all, I want to help them individually get better. And I believe in the long run, they're going to be happy playing, and individually they're going to get better. And so that makes the team better.
Of course, we were speaking with the girls volleyball coach at the varsity level at Mingus Union High School, Coach Hunter Tibbs. And Coach, we've gotten an opportunity to broadcast a couple of games at Mingus, some of the volleyball games. We do have one coming up on the 8th against Flagstaff. You on the sidelines are so fired up, and it's always fun to see when the coaches get into it. You're just so passionate on the sidelines, and I got to say, it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, that's, I'm pretty competitive. So that's a good thing and a bad thing sometimes. But, if I can bring a little bit of energy for the girls, I also need to do a little bit better job of containing some emotions, be able to just coach the girls. Sometimes they just need a coach and not a cheerleader on that side. So.
Yeah, but nonetheless, you're just letting your passions flow. And speaking of the players, you've had some great play. Like I mentioned, you've got 7 returning players, and 2 of them are Shelby Link and Brinley Lynch, who I like to call the law offices of Lynch and Link. And hopefully maybe we can get that nickname going. I'm really bad at nicknames. I called one of the football players, Alex Meyer, RoboCop, and that stopped almost immediately after I said it, but maybe we can get the law offices of Lynch and Link going. But regardless, you've gotten some really, really great play up front from your front line. And of course, your libero in, I believe it is Shacey Backus, who is the libero, or maybe I might be mixing up with her sister, which I think I am. So excuse me on that one. But who else has really been standing out this year?
Honestly, Sadie Backus has been phenomenal. She had a little bit of a rough start in that first game, still passed good for us, which is great, but just mentally getting prepped and ready for each game now. She passed again another 2.5 for us, and then overall season she's passing a 2.48 for us with only 6 errors out of 198 touches. So she is playing phenomenal ball right now. Really, really excited for her. She's hoping to get some college scholarships through that and play in the next level. And I think she's doing a great job setting herself up for success. She's really carrying that backline defense for us. I'm super proud of our girls playing back. I mean, as a unit, we're passing 2.2 right now, which I'd like to see up a little bit more, but overall, that's great, especially for this first year. We've got some good defense on our side. So.
Yeah, we've seen that so far, and the team is playing well. You guys are starting to gel a little bit more, especially with a new coach. It's always kind of curious if the team's going to be able to carry over that success, so whether it be minimum or a whole lot of success into the new regime, the Hunter Tibbs regime, as I'm going to start calling it. But like I said, the team has been playing well so far, and they're looking to carry in their momentum into the next game against Flagstaff. How do you feel your team matches up against the Flagstaff Eagles?
That's the top of the region right there. And that's a compliment to Flagstaff. They've had longevity there. They've had good success there. They've got good feeders. And feeder programs, middle schools going in. They've just got a great program set up there. And that's something that we're going to be trying to create here in Mingus, down here in Cottonwood and Verde Valley. And so I think we've got a long ways to go, honestly. And that's nothing against our girls. That's just where we're at as a program right now. I've got to do a good job setting us up for future years to come. I'm excited for the game, though. I think it's always fun to play against really good teams, and I'd like to take a set or two from them. I'd like to show them what we've got and be competitive and play our game. That's something that we've really got to work on throughout our game so far, is just focusing on what we do. It doesn't really matter what's on the other side. If we play a good game by ourselves, I'll be excited for that. One thing though is, as a team so far through 4, we've had 35 blocks. Our front line is playing phenomenal defense, and then with a 2.2 passing from the back row, we're getting balls up that we shouldn't be getting up, and that's great. Offensively, we've got to make some of those adjustments, especially against a tall Flagstaff team. We've be able to put the ball away when we need to put that ball away.
Yeah, and like you just said, kind of building that program like they have over at Flagstaff, bringing it over here to Mingus, and as I mentioned earlier, you do have 7 returning players, so they must like something, Coach, because they want to keep playing for you.
Yeah, I think that new atmosphere here is really positive for the girls. Just trying to be positive. Again, the coaching style of, first of all, I care about you. Second of all, I want you to get better. So I push all the girls. There's no settling, even for Sadie, who's having a great season. It's like, okay, you're at 2.5, great. Let's get to 2.7 now. She's got a long way to go. Still, all my girls have a long ways to go. But I think that's what athletes need in today's culture is somebody that cares about them. We've, especially in 2020 right now, that social distance was really hard on our athletes, and just being available for these girls has made a really big impact. I think a big difference in their lives, and I think it's going to start showing more and more on the court too, as we progress through the season.
Well, we've seen it so far, in the few games that we've been able to broadcast, the team has been improving. It seems like every game they're getting better, as you mentioned, just building that program, continuing to build a strong program into the future, especially in a very competitive 4A Grand Canyon region. I'm relatively newer to the area and obviously was not familiar with the 4A Grand Canyon region when I came to Yavapai Broadcasting last year, but it seems like in almost every sport, for a majority of the sports, it's competitive. You've got at least 3 teams tied for first 90% of the time. And in some cases, it's 4 teams. It's a very, very competitive division and a lot of fun to be a part of.
Yeah. And that's where, by the end of the year, if we're in the middle of the pack, that's great for us, especially for our first year. We've got a lot of adjusting to do to be able to get to that top pack. There's 3 or 4 teams that, especially in girls volleyball, they're hard to beat, and it's great. I love it. That's a good challenge for us. But trying to put Mingus Marauders back on that volleyball status, and that's going to take a year. It's going to take 2 years. But there's no reason, no excuse to not be up there. So I'm really excited for what's to come, and I'm thankful for really good competition. Man, every game I'm stressing over there on that sideline. And it's because they've got good coaching, they've got good programs, and they've got great athletes.
Again, we are speaking with the girls varsity head coach at Mingus Union High School, Coach Hunter Tibbs, for the volleyball team there. Coach, one last question before we take off. Obviously, as I mentioned at the top of the show, this is your first season coaching at the varsity level. You do have a few games under your belt so far. What have you learned as a coach from the first day of practice till the most recent game?
Yeah, I'm just learning more and more about our athletes, how to connect with them specifically. Coaching wise, I'm always constantly learning. Again, I mentioned earlier, but I've got several coaches in network that I'm in network with, and they are super helpful. I'm learning more and more about the game every day, what to look for, and it's those type of things that will help this program in the long run. But I am learning. Not so much about volleyball, but again, my athletes, how to connect with them, how to coach them differently. Each girl is different. And so how I need to communicate with them for better success for them is so important. And so not getting settled on I coach one way and you got to get into my program, but more of what works best for you guys. How can we do this while still being able to push them and challenge them and not settle. So.
Again, head coach for the varsity girls volleyball team at Mingus Union High School, Coach Hunter Tibbs. Coach, thank you very much for coming on. You're building a strong program. We're looking forward to see where it continues throughout the years of your coaching tenure and where the program goes. But I want to thank you very much for taking the time. Best of luck. You can catch the Marauders take on the Eagles right here on Verde Valley TV. Catch that game. Starts at 6 p.m. Should be a fun one.
Awesome. Hey, go Marauders.
Thank you very much, Coach. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have more Off the Bench right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year.
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. I am joined now by the athletic director for Coconino High School, Mr. Eric Freas. Mr. Freas, welcome on the program.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate your time.
Well, we're very happy to have you. I know that the beginning of the season looked a little questionable to start off the year due to the county COVID numbers, but both schools of the Flagstaff Unified School District, Coconino High School and Flagstaff High School, were able to get their seasons going. So first and foremost, I mean, how does it feel to get sports going back at the high school? Because the beginning of the year was looking a little questionable.
Yeah, it was looking a lot questionable. We're quite fortunate that we were able to figure that out, obviously. It's very nice to see the kids on a daily basis, doing obviously all of our precautions in place and that type of stuff. But it's great to see them at least have some type of normalcy back on campus and being able to do that, aside from the differences in their classes and that type of stuff. So it's definitely wonderful to have everybody as normal and back as possible.
Now, the Panthers are going to be sharing the football stadium this year, as, of course, Northern Arizona University is not having their football season, so Flagstaff needed a home. And, of course, Coconino, which has happened before, is happy to welcome the Eagles. But I will ask, is it a little weird to see more Eagles out on the campus there?
It's obviously one day on those home games that they are, they're here. It's a little unusual. I wouldn't call it weird by any means, but yeah, I mean, being a district facility, we have to be able to, and rightly so, we should be able to accommodate both the schools, and the athletic director at Flagstaff High School and myself work cohesively together quite regularly. So we were very fortunate that we were able to do that. So obviously their teams can play just as equally as ours can. So yeah, we're fortunate in that way.
Yeah, and like you said, it must have been a pretty easy process of, well, Flagstaff doesn't have a school, doesn't have a field. They have a school. They don't have a field, so it's probably just a pretty simple. They will just play at Coconino, basically,
correct.
Right?
Yeah, it was just a matter of lining up schedules and what needed to happen on what specific days. We've got two different doubleheaders, and then one where they play on a Saturday after us. So yeah, it's somewhat seamless, and like I said, Janine and I work together very regular to get the field set up and everything that needed to be done. So it worked.
And speaking of the field, of course, last Friday, the Panthers were able to get a big victory in overtime, a goal line stand essentially to get the week one victory, to get the Panthers on the right side of the win column. What can we expect from the Panthers this year? I know Zach Bennett is returning, the big running back. He had a huge game against Marcos Deniza. What else can we expect from the Panthers this year?
Well, we have my head coach has done a significant, terrific job of revamping some things that he wanted to work on in terms of different offenses and defenses. And I certainly anticipate as much success as we had last year. I certainly hope so. Obviously, that's the case. I never predict wins and losses and that type of stuff. But in terms of success and how hard they've been working despite all of our limitations is immeasurable. So I certainly expect the same amount of success we had last year, obviously just being 7 games, but hopefully we can make it into the playoffs and be successful in that way as well.
Like I mentioned, Coconino High School, usually at the top of the region for the past several years in the 4A Grand Canyon region. As I mentioned, Zach Bennett, one of the big running backs for Flagstaff, or for Coconino, excuse me. Is he getting any offers yet? Because he had a big year last year, and I know that he's already kind of setting in for another big one. So could we see maybe Zach Bennett playing at the college level?
Oh, there is no doubt you will see him playing on Saturdays, as I like to say, next year. I haven't the slightest idea where. He obviously has garnered a significant amount of interest from a number of schools just because of his talent and, frankly, his grades. Mm-hmm. He's very good in the classroom as well. So, I don't know where he's going to end up, but he will definitely be playing on Saturday next year. Yes.
Yeah, hopefully will. It's like two big running backs up in Northern Arizona. You've got Luis Jaramillo on the side of Flagstaff, and you got Zach Bennett on the side of Coconino. So the two running backs going back and forth, playing against each other at the end of the year will be quite fun. Although you guys do get to host that game, it'll be Coconino at home, somewhat a home game for both teams, but in a very, very strange year. How have the teams been adjusting to COVID restrictions?
You know, to their immense amount of credit, our kids have been significantly resilient. You know, we obviously had the situation at the beginning of the year where we got, you know, started in phase one, just like, you know, the rest of the city and that type of stuff, and we're able to work into doing some normalcy, and then had our little hiccup in terms of our numbers in Flagstaff, unfortunately, and had those couple of days that we were limited on what we can do, if anything. And frankly, when we were able to come back off of that, it was like they hadn't ever stopped. I mean, they're so excited to be here and so excited to be able to do, you know, what they love to do, even though they can't be on campus for school. At least that gives them some type of normalcy. So they're definitely resilient and have handled it quite well, all of our sports.
And again, we were speaking with Eric Freas, the athletic director over at Coconino High School. Mr. Freas, the volleyball team this year starts off 1-1. They had their first game canceled. They lost to Bradshaw in game 2. Were able to get a victory in game 3 against Mingus Union High School, the team that we broadcast here at Verde Valley TV. We obviously got a chance to see the team as Mingus took on Coconino, but Coach Wallace runs quite an impressive program. A few of the girls that we saw there were really striking the ball down, and the passing seemed crisp. The team just looked really, really good. How has that program grown since Coach Wallace took over?
You know, she has a lot of contacts, obviously, just within the community itself, the volleyball community. She does run a club outside of school. Obviously, they don't, you know, cohesively mix together during season or anything along those lines for a number of reasons. But she's done a significant, very nice job of stimulating the girls and, you know, piquing their interest and providing them stuff that's necessary, not necessarily even on the court, you know, just garnering their type of interest. She's, like I said, she's done a great job in terms of, I wouldn't say necessarily turning the program around, but definitely continuing with the success that we had prior to her getting here.
And that's what you would want. You know, of course, a struggling program, when you bring in a new coach, you do want to have that sort of turnaround. But when you've got success and your coach leaves and you can add in another coach just to continue the progress and continue the success of the program, I mean, that's got to be good. And like you said, Coach Wallace clearly has a passion on the sidelines. You can see her cheering on her players, giving them high fives, very encouraging. What I like about Coach Wallace a lot is just her very business attitude. She seems so locked in when her team is out there on the floor. She's a really, really great coach.
Very much so. Yeah, you don't talk about anything else during game time.
No,
yeah, she's definitely locked in. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. And it shows. They're always at the top of the region. They're a great program along with the football team. How about the rest of the fall sports? We know you got a couple other sports going on. How's sports around Coconino looking so far?
Yeah, you know, golf has had a number of matches. We're pretty darn young. And the one thing that I absolutely adore, the fact, you know, by definition, we don't have girls golf, but we have I think 5, if I looked at it correctly, 5 girls on our boys team. Wow. So, and a number of them are qualifying on a weekly basis in order to compete in that top 6. So they are, they're young, but you know, they're very, very successful and playing quite well. Tomorrow they actually head over to Laughlin to play in a match over there. So, and then, you know, my cross country teams, they've unfortunately lost a couple of matches as well. Couple of meets just because of the COVID situation. So my head coach Shannon Taylor's done a tremendous job of keeping them engaged, keeping them ready for whatever meet she frankly can come up with on like a weekly basis type of thing. They're quite successful. You know, the girls took first this past weekend. Boys, I think, took third. So, you know, all of the particular fall sports are definitely ramped up and being quite successful right now. And, you know, in a natural situation, you know, it's hard to believe, but, you know, today's the 5th. We've got just a hair over a month before winter season starts. So I've got a lot of interest in that already in terms of, you know, what are we going to be doing with the restrictions for winter, and I can't even speculate on that as of yet for you know, as most people can understand. It obviously goes, I wouldn't even say day by day, it goes hour by hour.
Yeah.
What's changing. So it's quite challenging. But yeah, the fall sports are being quite successful right now.
And that's great to hear. And it sounds like maybe a girls' golf program could be around the corner, possibly.
Absolutely.
For Coconino?
It's entirely possible. Yes. I'm not going to say yes or no, but it is definitively a possibility. Yeah.
And again, we were speaking with Coconino High School Athletic Director Eric Freas. Mr. Freas, obviously you are back in the classroom. I can see the giant calendar behind you, probably full of different events and everything else going on as you guys return to in-person learning. But we talked about kids playing back out onto the field, onto the courts, onto the track, wherever. What's it been like just seeing the kids returning back to school and returning to somewhat of a regular schedule?
Yeah, it's quite interesting, obviously, because, we normally have our normal, quote unquote, normal school day. They get out of school at 2:30. They are still getting out of 2:30, obviously, but off of their, whatever device they happen to be working off of, and we have to provide them enough time in order to get to campus to get to their respective practices. So we're not starting until 3:15. So it's 45 minutes later on a daily basis, which isn't a huge deal, but it's an adjustment, obviously, for some kids to have to travel all the way in. We discussed a lot at the very beginning of the season. We have a significant amount of kids that have no other way to get to school other than a bus.
Right.
So they have had to figure out how to get to campus on a daily basis to get to their respective practices. Their locker room use is basically non-existent, so they have to come with everything that they need for practice. They, go to their respective facility, do what they need to do, and then, I hate to say it, but immediately leave after that, because we spend a significant amount of time, sanitizing particular equipment as well as facilities and all that type of stuff in order to get ready for the day after. So it's definitely a challenge, but like I said, they've been extremely resilient and thrilled to be on campus for sure. And I know I'm thrilled to see them every day.
Yeah, and that's great. And like you said, you guys are taking the proper precautions to make sure that sanitation is done. Everyone's wearing a mask, all of the usual stuff that we're supposed to see. But like you mentioned, it's nice to see the kids back there playing out on the field, going back to classes, even if it's in this very strange year. And nonetheless, it's always a good sight to see. And it was going to transition to my next question, which is how is everyone adjusting? And it sounds like they're adjusting quite well.
Yeah. Our school board meets actually tomorrow evening to decide on what's going to be happening with, classes. I know our metrics and Flagstaff are not very favorable right now, so I have no idea what they're going to decide, but that's a decision that will be made. That's up to them tomorrow evening. Again, some type of normalcy would be great, but fully understand if we need to do what we've been doing all along, just to, until we get to maybe the new calendar year. I know everybody's kind of eager for 2020 to say goodbye.
Yeah. That's putting it lightly.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, the giant calendar behind you, there's probably a lot of stuff going on, or a lot of stuff in the process of possibly going on, but just more in general, is there and what is going on around campus right now?
So, home events obviously are happening. We don't have any particular home cross-country matches or golf matches. I mean, we have by definition home, but nothing is on campus, so to speak. So just, all three levels of football, all three levels of volleyball are happening on campus. There's a significant amount of teachers that are here on a daily basis teaching their respective classes from their classrooms. Again, all sanitizing and involved, and afterwards, after they leave for the day, doing that, my custodial staff has done a significant job of cleaning all those facilities appropriately. We have some ramifications just in terms of who can be in the gyms. We're not affording any outside groups to be in any facility right now.
Right.
We're only allowing, FUSD employees and students in the building. After school, obviously after school for students, nothing during the school time hours. So lots of little logistics that have gone on over the last number of months. It's almost become a new normal, but I certainly would love to go back to the old normal. That's easy said. Yes.
Yeah, very much so. I bet you do. And so do a whole bunch of other, all of us. Yeah, but, like you said, you're taking the precautions. It seems like things are running smoothly. Like you said, the county numbers right now aren't the best, but they can improve over time. And we'd love to get a winter and spring season. But for right now, fall sports at Coconino High School are fully in swing. And sounds like they're going well, Mr. Freas. We're excited. We're all excited. I know Flagstaff takes on Bradshaw Mountain this week. They'll be at home in Prescott Valley. You can check that out on KKLD The Cloud if you want to listen into the game. Mr. Freas, thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate you talking with me, and hopefully we can bring you on soon to talk about some more stuff going on and possibly even the winter season.
Yeah, absolutely. Be happy to. No problem.
Well, I want to thank Coconino High School Athletic Director Eric Freas for coming on to the program. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Off the Bench, we'll be right back with more sports. Don't go anywhere, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back, everybody, to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. I am now joined by varsity boys golf coach at Bradshaw Mountain High School, Mr. David Capka. Sir, welcome onto the program.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, obviously, golf, we know that COVID-19 has affected a few of the other sports. Football, there's a lot of precautions in place for football. I know when we get to the winter season, we'll have some more for basketball and wrestling and whatnot. But golf is a sport you can pretty easily socially distance with. So my question is how does the golf season look? Is it the same as it was last year, or is it a little different now with COVID precautions?
It's pretty similar. There are times that we do have to wear our masks. By nature, swinging golf clubs, you're not going to get too close to individuals. So when we're out on the range, there's obviously socially distanced with the range itself. The only time we're really needing to do the masks are, let's say we're getting on the bus or we're getting on a tee box, you're introducing each other to the other teams, depending on if the coaches agree on it, we'll wear masks. Otherwise, they'll just social distance on the tee box as well. And, no shaking of hands and what have you in the introduction phase of the start of each match.
So at the beginning of the season, when COVID-19 was really kind of eradicating the rest of the state, was the golf team able to practice throughout that time, or did they have to kind of take a step back and work on some things at home? Or were you guys able to hit the links throughout that entire time?
Well, what we did is we had kind of like an off-season program to where the kids could go out, hit some golf balls, play some holes on their own. The golf course, we practice out at Prescott Country Club. They are wonderful to the golf program here at Bradshaw, so they allow the kids to go out there. So the kids were basically on their own. It wasn't anything structured to where they could go out there and start working on their game.
And again, we are speaking with boys golf coach over at Bradshaw Mountain High School, David Capka. Coach, how is the season looking so far?
It's been struggles at time. We're very young. We've got 5 freshmen, a sophomore, and 2 seniors. And one of our seniors had back surgery in the off season, so he hasn't been able to play this year. So he just comes out and helps the younger kids. With the 5 freshmen, they really haven't played golf before, and it's a game that takes years to start getting the game to where you can be proficient enough to compete. So it's been a long season in that sense, but it's a learning phase for these kids.
Now, of course, despite the back problem, it must be nice to have an extra hand there, or somebody who's been with the program for a little while to sort of help ease that transition for the younger players into next season when they're going to still be on the varsity roster, and just to give them a little more experience going forward.
Yeah, it's been nice. His name is Mac Boyce, and what he'll do is he'll go out with some of the younger kids, and a lot of the times it's just a matter of teaching them the game of golf, some etiquette, what clubs to use, certain lies, and so forth, while I'm out working with the other kids. Again, Mac has done a great job, and been really positive for the kids, just working with them, even though it's frustrating for him not being able to swing the club due to his back issues. But it's been nice having Mac out there.
Anybody else been standing out so far? I know you mentioned you do have a pretty young team, but has anybody really sort of came out of nowhere to play quite well this season?
We do have a sophomore, Andrew Reynolds. He played for us last year. He's playing really well. He's shooting right around 42 on average per match. So he's competing. We've got some really great teams in our conference this year in our division between Prescott, Lee Williams. But Andrew's hanging in there. He's, again, shooting on average about 6 over, which is pretty good for a sophomore. And, he's really dedicated. He's out there working on his game every day. And in the off season, he did a lot of time on the range and on the course. So I can foresee him really picking up to him shooting in the 30s as he moves forward into his junior and senior year.
Well, that's good. And that's got to be good going forward as well. Like you mentioned, you do have a younger team, but when you got some of those younger players that can really they kind of grasp on to the development aspect and they start to make those strides, it again, just really helps the program out a lot.
Right. That's true. And again, with these young guys, I tell them every day, you know what? If you show improvement, that's all I'm going to ask for this year. You make a great shot, hey, that's a positive. You're going to make some bad shots. You're learning the game. Club selection, you're going to learn, the different situations where you're going to have to make that call, and you're going to trial by error, And again, that's all I'm looking for this year is improvement with their games. They're learning what needs to be done and the very basics. I did a lot of rules this year with these young guys because they didn't know anything about the game, majority of them, the freshmen. So, again, it's been a learning experience for them. They're enjoying it. That's what counts. Now it's just a matter of motivating them to work in the off season to improve their game and to understand the game.
And again, we are joined by David Capka, the head boys varsity golf coach over at Bradshaw Mountain High School. Coach, what has the focus in practice been so far this season?
Again, it's just learning the game right now because of those freshmen. Now I will have my sophomore Andrew and my senior Alec go out on their own so I can, spend more time with the young guys and just teach them the very basics of the game. That's what we're concentrating on for the most part this season. And again, let the older guys work on their games because they know enough about it that they can work on it without having me be around.
And we are headed into the final stretch of the season. What has been the goal of this team? Just, like you mentioned, a younger team. What has been the goal of the team going down the stretch, really?
That they keep positive attitudes, that they see improvement in themselves. They don't get down because in the game of golf, once you start losing your confidence, your game is going to really take a beating. So, the goal is stay positive. You hit a good shot. You see that it can be done, and you just work on concentrating on being consistent and show improvement.
And does the team have an identity that they've been kind of rallying around this whole season?
Again, it's just improvement. That's it. We're young, and we just want to stay positive.
Now, you've been at Bradshaw Mountain for, I believe you said, a little over 20 years, and you've been coaching golf at the school for about 16. What have you seen improvement-wise throughout that program since when you started to where you're at now?
It's up and down, to be honest with you. There'll be years where I'll have some really good golfers that have played in the off season for many years at younger ages. And then I'll have years where I'll have, like this year, many kids that have never picked up a club before. So it's hard to say consistently that, the program's improved because the golfers come and go. With our district, we don't have that feeder where kids are coming out of areas with, I don't want to say lots of money, but, golf is an expensive sport. So,
right.
You have to have the money to go out and play on your own in the off season. And again, we're trying to tell these kids that the Present Country Club is offering you guys the opportunity to play year round at no cost. You just need to take advantage of it. Now, again, at a school like ours, most of the kids play more than one sport. So, of course, in the off season, they're playing something else. So that kind of ties their hands, or they're playing club ball in another sport. Again, it makes it tough to get that off season workout.
Yeah, I outside of the fact that I'm horrible at golf, I will agree it is quite expensive to play. The closest to golf that I get is this polo that I'm currently wearing. Yeah, if you want to lose some golf balls, let me know. I got a great slice on my backswing. It's
fall right behind you and pick them up. There we go.
Yeah, it is quite fun. Again, we are speaking with Dave Capka, the head boys varsity golf coach over at Bradshaw Mountain High School. What about you as a coach? Like I mentioned, 16 years with the program. What have you learned throughout those years?
It's all about the kids. If you see a kid improve, they enjoy the game, this is a game that they're going to stick with into their 80s. We go out at the country club and you see, we call them old timers out there, in their 70s and 80s out there still swinging, having a good old time. I said, you know what, that's going to be you. You're learning a skill that you can go ahead and play well into your older age years. That just enjoy this, because once you're out of high school, you can continue this sport for long periods of time, where other sports like football, baseball, it comes a time where you're going to be all beat up and it's not going to go much longer. So just pick up the sport, play it, enjoy it, and continue it.
Like you mentioned, if golf is very much is somewhat of a leisure sport, something that people like to play on the weekends. It's still, for me at least, it's quite difficult to pick up. But like you mentioned, as opposed to baseball or football, this is a sport that you can play literally all year round at any point, as long as it's not raining or snowing, of course, because then it gets a little difficult to see the ball. But it's something that you can do forever, and it is almost like a life skill, learning how to play golf, a skill that I still have yet to master, but we're getting there.
There you go. Just keep working at it. Practice makes perfect is what I tell them.
Yeah, my roommate and I, he keeps telling me to go out there, and he loves golf, so he's always trying to push for us to go golfing. We did a little in the summertime, but it gets to the point where if I'm handing him $20 for a new sleeve of balls every time, yeah, I kind of lose my interest a little bit. But the program over at Bradshaw sounds like you guys are improving. A little younger this year, but next season should be quite an improvement with some of the younger kids moving up to that upper class stage.
Yeah, we should have quite an improvement for next year.
And how about the girls golf program? How has that one been going this season?
Pretty much the same scenario. We have a good turnout this year. We had 8 this year, which is very good for the girls team. Again, younger squad, had a couple upperclassmen that had never played before, but you know what? Again, they're learning a skill that's going to carry on for many, many years. And the idea of the enjoyment factor, they're seeing improvement. And again, that's what we're asking for at this point. Eventually, they'll get to the point where they're going to take it serious enough to want to play it year round. They're going to take advantage of the course and play in the off season. We're going to work out some things with the course where we can get some lessons for them, hopefully motivate them again to take it serious enough to play year round.
And again, we are joined by David Capka, the head varsity boys golf coach over at Bradshaw Mountain High School. Coach, before I let you go, I got one last question. What are you shooting these days?
I lost count after the third hole. I'm probably like you. I spend more time with the kids than I do playing myself. So I need to work on my game as well. And one of these days, when I get up in that age, I will be playing a little bit more. But for now, I don't play that much. I go hit maybe 4 balls a day, and that's it. And as you know, if you're not out there every day hitting the balls, it's hard to pick up. So I couldn't speculate what I'd be hitting these days.
Well, Coach, I want to thank you for taking the time and coming on the show, and hopefully we can bring you on again to talk a little more golf.
Yeah, well, hey, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Again, joined by David Capka, Bradshaw Mountain Varsity boys golf coach. Off the Bench is going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll take a look ahead at next week and what sports are on the way. You're watching Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports with Philip Katafamo on KVNA and Verde Valley TV. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Want to welcome you back here to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Katafamo. Want to welcome you back here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM, wherever you may be watching or listening. We're happy to have you along with us. Want to thank my guests for coming on today. Girls varsity head volleyball coach at Mingus Union High School, Coach Hunter Tibbs. Of course, Coconino athletic director, Eric Freas, and David Capka, the head varsity boys golf coach at Bradshaw Mountain High School. I want to thank them all for coming on the program, and best of luck on the rest of the season for all of them. Hopefully we will continue the rest of this fall sports season safely, and we'll be able to complete it. That's been the big goal so far. There was something that did happen this week that I feel we should at least acknowledge. Coconino and Flagstaff, they had a volleyball game on Tuesday get canceled because an individual in direct contact with the team, not a player and not a coach, somebody in direct contact with the Coconino High School girls volleyball team contracted COVID-19. So at least for this week, there was a game scheduled for this Saturday. It has been canceled for Coconino High School. Flagstaff is going to continue as normal. They're going to continue their games. They've got one coming up here in the coming week. But for right now, at least this Saturday's game and the games that had happened were canceled. They have been canceled. We're looking forward to possibly getting picked back up here on Monday with Coconino varsity volleyball. But for right now, again, Flagstaff's going to continue as normal. Coconino, they're going to test the players, make sure that they haven't contracted anything, and hopefully they'll be able to continue the season. But for now, the game that was scheduled this weekend has been canceled. But please contact Flagstaff Unified School District or contact Coconino High School if you have any more questions. They will have the information for you. This is just what we're getting here. But for right now, again, Coconino girls volleyball has been put on hold for right now, but we're hoping they'll get back to it on Monday. Some other things coming up this week in the volleyball realm. Thunderbird is going to take on Prescott on Monday, so we'll have a game there as the Badgers look for another victory on their season. Bradshaw will take on Mingus on Tuesday. You can watch that game right here on Verde Valley TV. If you are a Bears fan or a Marauder fan, that game should get kicked off around 6:30, so Bradshaw will take on Mingus on Tuesday. You can watch that right here. For football continues strong. Lee Williams will take on Bradshaw as Coach Young looks for another victory, and Lee Williams looks for another victory on their schedule. They started out their season's pretty hot. Combs will take on Mingus Union right here in Cottonwood. You can catch that game on KYBC and Verde Valley TV. Coconino will take on Prescott, and of course Flagstaff will travel to Mojave to take on the Thunderbirds. Again, I want to thank my guests for coming on. I want to thank you for watching and listening. I want to thank our sponsors, Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. We're going to have more sports on the way next week right here on Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports. I want to wish you a great rest of your week, and thank you for watching and listening. More sports on the way. Don't go anywhere. Off the Bench will be back next week with a fresh new episode and a whole lot to talk about right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. Thank you for watching and listening.